If your own son pocketed $93 million and told you to pack your things because you didn't fit his new life, would you cry on the curb, or would you smile, fold your sweater, and pull out the little piece of paper you kept for 12 years, the one that could freeze every last dollar until he learned his manners? I'm 80 years old. I walk slow, but my memory runs. I remember who signed what, who borrowed when, and who promised forever on my kitchen table with coffee rings bleeding into the page. My son thought money made him untouchable. What he forgot was simple. The first check that kept his lights on came from me, and I took something with that check. Something he didn't dare read. So when he threw me out of his glass palace, I didn't break. I went home, opened my cedar box, and smiled. If he wanted to learn the price of disrespect, class was about to start. The night he did it, the house on Ridgeview looked like a magazine cover. White walls, black marble, waiters in shirts so stiff they couldn't bend. They called it a liquidity event. I call it a payday. My son, Chase Whitaker, the boy I once taught to tie his shoes on the bottom stair, wore a suit that cost more than my first car and a grin that didn't belong on the face I raised. People clapped when he walked by. They said things like 9-3 post fees and pure alpha, and laughed like paper couldn't burn. I stood by the big window where you could see the whole city under your feet. I was wearing my good navy dress and the pearl earrings Walter gave me for our 30th. I held a glass of water because champagne makes my head hurt. Folks came up to me and said, "You must be so proud." I said, "He worked hard." I didn't say the rest. The part about the nights his hard work was me at my table, going line by line through his software subscription charges to find the leak, or the afternoon I pawned my wedding ring to make payroll his second quarter because 2 weeks, Ma, I promised sounded just enough like the truth to keep a roof on the dog. Sloane, his wife with the cold smile and gold heels, floated over with a camera crew she rents by the hour to make it look like God follows her. "Eleanor," she sang, kissing the air near my cheek. "You look so classic." Classic means not shiny enough. I nodded. "How is Jax?" I asked. My grandson calls me Gran when it gets him something and Ms. Eleanor when it doesn't. He's 12, and what he mostly has is the internet. "Thriving," she said. "He's networking in the media room." Networking meant playing games with 6 other boys who will grow into 6 other men who think exceptions are rules they haven't named yet. Chase finished a speech, I heard them clap, and waded through people until he reached me. "Ma," he said, like a pitch already rolling, "I need a second." We went down a hallway lined with pictures that looked like art until you saw they were just colors. He unlocked a door with his phone. Inside was an office as white as a hospital. He shut the door and clicked the music down to a hum. "So," he said, taking a breath, "I've been thinking about the next phase." "I've been thinking about pie," I said, "because when people talk like that they forget you don't care." "Apple. With cheddar. The way your father liked." He smiled polite. "Listen. Sloane and I are repositioning the brand. There's a PR firm. A sponsorship. A new house in Brentwood. We're turning this place into a studio. And with everything moving, it's just not a fit for you to be here during the transition." "I'm not here," I said. "I'm here tonight because you asked me to come." He blinked like a TV buffering. "Right," he said. "I mean, overall. We've booked you a nice suite at the Meridian for a couple weeks. Your bungalow is," he paused, picking a word like a shirt. "Tired. We'll get you set up in something appropriate. What do they call it? Senior lifestyle community." "Appropriate," I said, letting it sit in my mouth. "You mean out of your way?" "Ma," he said, softening the way he does when he lies, "this is about care. About optics. Press will be around. Investors. I need clean lines." "Cleaner than your mother," I said. He put his hand on my arm, a gentle guide that used to be small and warm and now felt like it had metal under the skin. "Please don't make this harder." "Hard is relative," I said, but he was already moving, already waving to Ted from the fund and to Lila from the podcast and to whatever mirror he keeps in his head that tells him story beats. He walked me back to the music and the lights and signaled to a young woman in black with a radio in her ear. "Carmen will get your bag," he said, not noticing the way my stomach rolled when he said bag like I came with one ready. I looked at his face and tried to find my boy. The one who cut his jeans into capes and pushed peas under his fork to make them hide. The one who cried when I told him his father wasn't coming home from the plant that afternoon, not now, not ever. Some part of that boy had been sold with the rest. "Don't forget to call me on Sunday," I said. "I didn't mean it. I say it because it's a scar I rub." He kissed the air near my temple. "Love you, Ma." They sent me out the service entrance with a bellman and a paper envelope with a Meridian logo and 2 nights prepaid, as if inconvenience could be tipped. Carmen smiled like we were both doing time. "It's just for the transition," she said. "People like transitions. They make cruelty sound like design." I didn't go to the Meridian. I told the driver to take me to my house on Larkspur, the little white place Walter and I bought the year Jax was born, the one with the kitchen where the linoleum squeaks by the sink. I unlocked the door and the quiet met me like an old friend with bad knees. I put the envelope with the room keys on the counter so I could look at them and remember what they meant. In the morning, I boiled an egg and sat at my table with my coffee and the old clock ticking its way through what is left of us. There was a note in my hoodie pocket from last spring: "Pick up dry cleaning, call Gus about the fence," and it made me laugh. I don't keep enough things in my life that make me laugh. By 9, I had changed into my denim shirt and my navy cardigan with the elbow patches. I pulled the cedar box from the top of my closet and set it on the table. The smell of it made my eyes smart: cedar and thyme. Inside were the things I keep where they can't be jangled by other people's needs. Walter's union card. The matchbook from the diner where he asked me to marry him. A photo of Chase at 8 with a gap where a tooth was trying to decide. And the envelope. It was the kind of manila that gets soft at the corners. On the front, in my hand from 12 years ago, I had written, "Chase Seed, terms golden." I opened it and slid the papers out like a librarian. 12 years back, after his third, I'm almost through the tunnel, I sat him at this table. He wanted 50,000. I had 32 and 400 in coin, if I shook the jar by the fridge. He showed me a deck with channels and funnels and faces of strangers smiling at boxes. I listened, and then I told him yes. On one condition: he'd issue a special share, 1 golden share, held by me in trust, with veto rights over any change of control event, any sale of substantially all assets, and the creation of any new class of stock that would subordinate common. "It's just a stamp," I said. "You'll never notice it." He sighed and called me dramatic, and then he signed because the payroll was late and he wanted it to be my problem. We got a notary, Alma Ruiz from the pharmacy, who keeps her stamp in her purse next to the mints, and Chase took a picture of us because I told him you take pictures when you change a life. I put the share certificate and the signed voting agreement in this envelope and wrote golden on the front because plain words are enough if you tell them where to sit. He forgot. Or he remembered and hoped nobody else would. My phone buzzed at 10. The number was a 212. "Ms. Whitaker?" a smooth voice asked. "This is Eleanor," I said. "This is Harlan King, counsel for Meridian Keen Partners, the buyer of Scout Path Technologies. First, congratulations to your family. Second, we're finalizing post-closing consents and noticed a signature gap tied to a legacy governance instrument, something called a golden share on your son's cap table. Our diligence shows you as the holder. It's a vestigial thing. Purely formal. If you can sign the consent in our email, funds can flow as scheduled." "Vestigial," I said, tasting it. "Like an appendix." "Exactly," he said, relieved. "Appendices burst," I said, and heard his pencil stop. "We'd love to get you a courier." "I'd love to make a pie," I said, and felt the edge slide back into me like a blade finding its slot. "Email me." I hung up. The email arrived before the kettle sang. Attached, a consent of golden shareholder, and a tidy letter offering, politely so politely, to send a notary to me today. There was a paragraph that said, in nice words, that they couldn't release the final tranche, 23 million, if I was counting, until the consent was signed. I printed it because paper makes things honest. I laid it on the table beside the original voting agreement I kept like a blanket. The language was the same. My finger found my own name the way a dog finds home. There's a thing about revenge people forget. It's not rage. It's not smoke and glass. It's the calm you get when you know the rules better than the people breaking them. I poured my coffee and dialed Alma Ruiz at the pharmacy. "You still keep your stamp in your purse?" I asked. "For you, Ms. Whitaker," she said. "I keep it under my pillow." "I might need you this week," I said. "Tell your husband I'll bring empanadas." I called my neighbor, Gus Delaney, the retired claims adjuster with forearms like old rope and a way of telling the truth that feels like tucking you into bed.
"You busy this afternoon?" I asked. "I'm always busy," he said. "I can stop." "Bring your eyes," I said. "We'll look at a few lines."
At noon, I drove to the bank and asked for Shannon Reed, the manager with the hair that always looks like it wants to be in charge. I put a copy of the voting agreement on her desk and said, "If anyone comes in with anything that smells like me, you call me." She leaned back like I'd brought a little thunder in my purse.
"Yes, ma'am," she said.
Back home, I made a sandwich and set the consent on the table beside a pad of sticky notes.
I wrote, "What do I want?" and under it, "Not money."
Money was the tool, not the goal.
Respect. Safety. Order. Truth. I added one more in bigger letters, memory.
Because revenge without remembrance is just noise, and I'm too old for noise. At 3, my phone lit up with a name that still has the power to pull the air from a room, Chase. I let it ring twice, like I had something better to do.
"Ma," he said, and his voice had changed. The push was gone.
There was a hum of worry under the words.
"Did a lawyer call you?"
"A nice man who knows adjectives," I said.
"Harlan something."
"Okay," he said, exhale audible.
"So it's just a thing. A form. Can you sign it?"
"They need it for, well, to release some of the money."
"It's not a big deal." "Isn't it?" I asked.
Silence, and in it, the part of him that does math.
"It's, look, we can come by. We can bring dinner. I'll have them send a notary. It'll take 2 minutes." "I'll read," I said.
"It's the same one from," he stopped. He had the decency to stop. "The same one from my kitchen," I said.
"With the coffee rings." He tried gentleness. "Ma, I'm sorry about last night. It was chaotic. I said things I didn't."
"You said them," I said.
He blew a breath. Can we start clean?" "Clean costs. It costs more when you're late to pay it. Send your notary tomorrow," I said. "Bring Sloan. Bring Jax." He brightened. "We'll make a night of it." "No," I said. "You'll bring them because I asked. And you'll come on time." "Of course," he said. "Thank you, Ma. You won't regret this." He hung up.
I sat a long time looking at the paper on my table. The city outside my window went from gold to blue. When the streetlights popped, I got up and made tea and wrote 3 more sticky notes. On the first, rules for my signature. On the second, what he needs to say. On the third, what I need to hear. The doorbell rang at 6:30. It wasn't Chase. It was Sloan, standing on my steps with her shoulders bare and her hair like a commercial. She glanced at my porch light like it offended her. "Eleanor," she said, stepping inside without waiting. The scent of expensive flowers came in with her. "We are so excited for this next chapter."
"Are you?" I said.
She gave my living room a once-over that should have apologized and didn't.
"We'll get you moved into Harbor Oaks," she said. "They have a saltwater pool and a ceramic studio." "I don't swim," I said. "I bake."
She smiled like that was a little bit cute and mostly a little bit sad.
"Chase is so grateful for your support. Really. We're family. And Brand is."
"Brand," I said, "is not blood."
She blinked. "We'll have the notary tomorrow. 6 p.m.? We'll bring sushi." "I have plates," I said. "I don't need your fish."
When she left, she put her hand on my arm the way you steady a person crossing a street.
It was practiced. It made me tired.
I slept light, the way you do when your house is an old ship and there's weather. In the morning, I swept the kitchen floor because sweeping is thinking with a handle. Gus came by at 9 with coffee and a bag of muffins he didn't admit he bought.
We sat.
He read the agreement, then the consent, then the line where the release of funds waited for my name like a dog waits for the door to open.
"You hold the valve," he said. "I hold the lesson," I said. "You can do both," he said. "Turn the money on when the learning's done."
At noon, my phone buzzed again with a 212.
"Mr. King. Any questions?" he asked, friendly like he was used to yes. "I have a few," I said. "I'll give you answers when I have what I asked for." "And that is?" he asked, pen ready. You'll see it when you get it, I said. Bring your notary at 6. Bring a good pen.
I set the phone down and wrote a letter in my hand that hasn't changed since the year we bought our first couch on layaway.
It was short. 3 sentences. I folded it and put it under the consent. I set 2 plates on the table and 2 glasses, because sometimes props help people remember their lines. At 5:58, a black SUV stopped outside my little house on Larkspur. 6 o'clock to the dot, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Chase in a navy jacket he wore like armor, Sloane holding a white box, Jax behind them pretending he wasn't watching everything. Behind them stood a woman with a notary bag and a flat mouth. Chase leaned in to kiss my cheek. I stepped back and let the space say the words I didn't. Let's get this done, he said, hands rubbing together. We'll be out of your hair. I like my hair, I said. Sit.
They sat around my table, the same one that held his first deck, his first promise, the peanut butter stains from 2nd grade.
I placed the consent on the wood. The notary reached for her seal. I put my hand on the paper. Before we sign, I said, we're going to talk.
Chase smiled for the notary, for Sloane, for the ghost camera he carries.
Of course. Whatever you need. I slid the folded letter toward him. Read that out loud, I said. He unfolded the paper, and the first line took the color out of his face. He looked up at me like a boy who has just realized the test is on the chapter he skipped. He didn't know I was at the stop sign. He stared at the letter a long time, his lips pressed so thin they were nearly white. His wife leaned toward him, brows knit. What is it? She whispered, but I could hear her just fine. Read it, I said, my voice even. Chase cleared his throat, eyes still on the paper. I, Chase Whitaker, acknowledge that my mother, Eleanor Whitaker, holds the golden share of Scout Path Technologies, with veto power over any sale or transfer of control. I further acknowledge that no funds may be released until she is satisfied that her terms are met. The notary, a woman in her 40s with blunt-cut black hair and a navy blazer, blinked and looked at me, then at him. Is this part of the signing? She asked cautiously. It's part of the truth, I said, folding my hands calmly. Sloane's mouth fell open. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We've already closed the deal. You can't. I can, I interrupted softly. And I have. That paper was signed 12 years ago at this very table. With a notary stamp. With witnesses. And it has teeth, sharp enough to chew through every dollar you think you've already spent. Chase ran a hand down his face, muttering, "Oh God." Jax shifted in his chair, pretending to scroll his phone but sneaking glances at me. He might only be 12, but kids know when the air in a room changes. Ma, Chase said finally, his voice quieter. What do you want? I leaned back in my chair, letting silence stretch until it was taut as fishing line. Respect, I said. And consequences. You threw me out of your house with nothing but a bellman and an envelope. You forgot who raised you, who carried you, who held the line when no one else would. You want my signature? Then you'll give me what I'm owed. Sloane scoffed. This is blackmail. No, I said, turning my eyes on her. This is balance. The notary shifted uncomfortably, adjusting her papers. Mr. Whitaker, I'll need clarity before I can notarize anything, she murmured. Chase's jaw tightened. All right, he said finally. Name your terms. I slid a sheet of paper across the table. I'd written it out earlier in my steady schoolteacher's hand. A written, signed apology, public, not whispered. Title of my home on Larkspur placed fully in my name, no liens, no tricks. A trust fund for Jax, managed by me, so he learned stability, not arrogance. A promise in writing, that I choose my care, my house, my end. Not you. Not anyone else. Sloane laughed sharply. You expect us to hand you property and money like a ransom note? I expect nothing, I said. But I hold the golden share. Without me, that 23 million stays locked in escrow. Think about your investors, Sloane. Think about the calls you'll have to make. Her face hardened, the mask slipping. You can't ruin us. Watch me, I said quietly. For a moment, only the tick of the kitchen clock filled the silence. Chase leaned forward, elbows on the table. His bravado was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in years,
the boy who used to cry when his science projects fell apart.
Ma, please, he said softly. Don't do this. They'll crucify me if the deal collapses. I'll lose everything. I met his eyes.
Then you should have thought about that before you treated your mother like a piece of luggage. The notary cleared her throat again. Mr. Whitaker, Mrs. Whitaker, if there are conditions to the consent, they need to be documented formally.
I can notarize amendments if required. Amendments? Sloane hissed, glaring at her. I smiled faintly.
It seems the law knows how to listen, even if my family doesn't.
Chase rubbed his temples. Fine, he muttered. We'll draw it up.
But you'll sign once it's in writing, right?
I'll sign when I see sincerity, I said. Paper without truth is just pulp.
Sloane slammed the sushi box onto the table.
This is insane. We're handing her leverage she doesn't deserve. I turned my head slowly to her. Deserve. My voice was quiet, but sharp.
I deserved a son who remembered, who made sure his lights stayed on.
I deserved kindness instead of eviction. Instead, you gave me betrayal. Now I'll take justice.
Her lips parted, but no words came out.
Chase pushed back his chair abruptly, standing. We'll get it drafted tonight, he said, voice hoarse. I'll bring it tomorrow. Please, Ma. Don't call the buyer yet. I didn't answer. I just looked at him until he dropped his gaze.
When they left, slamming the door harder than they needed to, I sat alone at the table.
The notary lingered, her seal still untouched. She met my eyes.
I've seen families fight over money before, she said softly. But I've never seen one underestimate a mother like this.
I smiled at her. They'll learn. One way or another. She nodded, packed her things, and left.
I gathered the papers into a neat stack and slid them back into my cedar box.
My hands were steady.
Outside, the night had settled heavy, and somewhere down the block a dog barked at the dark.
I poured myself tea and looked at the empty chair across from me. Walter's chair.
I touched the folded letter again, the one I'd made Chase read.
You'd be proud, I whispered.
Because the real lesson hadn't even begun.
Tomorrow, I'd raise the stakes.
The next morning, I woke early, nerves humming under my skin. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the sticky notes I'd written the night before.
Respect. Safety. Order. Memory.
4 words, plain and powerful. Chase thought he could buy me with sushi and an apology scribbled by a lawyer. He didn't understand that this was no longer about signatures or settlements.
This was about balance. At 8 sharp, my phone buzzed. It was Chase. His voice was tight, but careful. Ma, we drafted the amendments.
Sloane's brother, he's an attorney, says it'll satisfy you.
Can we come by today? I took a sip of coffee. You can bring them tonight. 6 o'clock. Bring Jax again.
Why?
He asked, almost snapping.
Because he needs to see what family means.
And what it doesn't. Chase sighed. Fine. We'll be there.
After hanging up, I pulled the cedar box back onto the table. Inside lay my golden share documents, Walter's union card, and a stack of unpaid promissory notes Chase had signed over the years, every desperate loan he swore he'd repay.
I'd never called them in. Until now. I picked up the phone and called my old neighbor, Gus. Got time today? I asked. For you? Always, he said. What's cooking? Justice, I said. And maybe a pie.
By mid-morning, Gus was sitting across from me with his readers perched on his nose, scanning the original voting agreement. His thick fingers traced the notary stamp at the bottom.
Ironclad, he said. They'd need a miracle to wiggle out of this. And miracles are in short supply. I smiled faintly. Walter always said prepare for storms before the sky turns black. Smart man, Gus said, sipping his coffee. So what's the next move? They'll bring papers tonight, I said. They'll beg. I'll listen. But first, I need the buyer to know I'm not bluffing. I called the number Hanover had given me the night before. His voice, gravelly but steady, filled my ear. Mrs. Whitaker, I've already spoken to a contact in compliance. They know your rights are valid. They'll hold the escrow until you sign. You've got the upper hand. Use it wisely. Thank you, I said. I don't want to ruin him. Just teach him. Hanover chuckled. Sometimes those are the same thing. The rest of the day, I busied myself with chores. I swept the porch, watered the hydrangeas, even ironed the tablecloth I hadn't used since Walter's last birthday. If Chase and Sloane wanted a show, I'd give them one, on my terms. At 5:55, headlights washed across my front lawn. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop. I could see Jax's face in the back window, pressed against the glass, eyes darting nervously. Good. Let him see. Let him learn. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. I opened it to find Chase holding a leather folder, his jaw tight, his suit immaculate. Sloane wore another cream-colored dress, her smile as brittle as porcelain. Jax shuffled behind them in sneakers too white to have ever touched dirt. Evening, I said calmly. Come in. They filed into my kitchen, sitting around the same wooden table that had carried every Thanksgiving turkey and every school project that needed glue. I placed a fresh pie in the center, the scent of apples and cinnamon filling the air. Chase opened the folder. Here's the amended consent, he said, sliding it toward me. It acknowledges your golden share and confirms the trust for Jax. It transfers the deed to your house in Larkspur. And it includes a letter of apology. I picked up the letter first. My name was spelled right. The words were neat. But they were hollow, phrases like we regret any misunderstanding and family is important to us written in the sterile voice of lawyers. No mention of eviction, no mention of betrayal. I set it down. This is paper, not sincerity. Sloane's smile cracked. What more do you want? She snapped. We gave you everything you asked for. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. You gave me documents. I asked for respect. Respect comes from the heart, not a pen. Chase rubbed his forehead. Ma, please. The investors are on edge. The press is circling. If you don't sign tonight, I could lose it all. Then say it, I said softly. Say the words you've buried under your pride. In front of your wife. In front of your son. Silence stretched across the room. The clock ticked loud enough to echo. Jax shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. Finally, Chase spoke, his voice breaking. I was wrong. He swallowed hard. Throwing you out. Treating you like you didn't matter. It was cruel. And I'm ashamed. I wouldn't have a dime if it weren't for you. You saved me when I was drowning. And instead of honoring that, I turned my back on you. I'm sorry, Ma. The words trembled in the air. Real words. Not pulp. For the first time, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who cried when he scraped his knee, who used to leave me sticky notes that said I love you in crayon. But before I could answer, Sloane's chair screeched against the floor. This is humiliating, she hissed. We don't need her. There has to be a way around this. I turned to her, my voice calm but sharp. There isn't. And if you can't respect me, then you can respect the law. Either way, the outcome's the same. Chase shot her a warning look. She clamped her lips shut, fury burning in her eyes. I folded my hands. I'll sign when I'm ready. Not before. You'll bring me another letter, one written by you, Chase, not a lawyer. And Jax will deliver it to my porch tomorrow morning. Chase blinked. Jax. Yes, I said, turning to my grandson. Because he needs to know what responsibility looks like. He needs to know that family isn't disposable. Jax swallowed hard and nodded, eyes wide. Chase looked defeated but nodded too. All right. Tomorrow morning. They stood to leave, the weight of the moment hanging heavy. I watched them walk out, their perfect SUV pulling away from my modest driveway. I closed the door, locked it, and returned to the table. The pie sat untouched, steam curling into the quiet air. I smiled faintly. Because tomorrow, the real lesson would begin. And I had one more surprise waiting for them in the cedar box. I woke before the sun and set the kettle anyway. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I laid the iron tablecloth across the kitchen table and set a plate of cookies in the center like I was staging a lesson, which I was. By 8:30, I heard the quick sloppy thump of sneakers on my porch. The doorbell rang twice, nervous. I opened the door to a boy trying to look older than he is. Hair too perfect, hoodie too clean, eyes darting like minnows. He held an envelope in both hands. "Morning, Ms. Whitaker," he said, suddenly polite. When a child switches to last names, he's bracing for grades. "Good morning," I said. "Come in." He hovered at the threshold. "Mom said, Dad said, to give you this. And to say he's working on things." "Are you working on things?" I asked. His cheeks pinked. "I don't know what that means." "It means showing up," I said gently. "Sit a minute." He followed me to the table, slid onto a chair, and placed the envelope in front of him like it might explode. I pushed the cookies closer. He pretended not to want one. Then he wanted two. "Open it," I said. He tore the flap, pulled out a handwritten letter, and blinked. I saw his father's slanted ease. "Read it out loud." He swallowed. "I, Chase Whitaker, was wrong to throw my mother out of my home. I was cruel. I forgot who kept my lights on when there were none. I am ashamed of how I treated you. You are entitled to respect, to your home, to choose your own future. I am sorry, Mom." His voice cracked on sorry. He cleared his throat and continued. "I agree to transfer title of Larkspur to you, to establish a managed trust for my son, and to honor your golden share rights without argument." He finished, stared at the page, then at me. I could have hugged him for reading every word like it mattered. I didn't. Lessons don't stick if you rush them. "Do you understand what he wrote?" I asked. He looked down. "That he was bad." "No," I said. "That he's learning. There's a difference. Bad is a fence. Learning is a gate." He nodded like he wanted to, even if he didn't quite. "Tell your dad I received it," I said. "And tell him there are 2 more steps before I sign." His eyes widened. 2 more. I stood, crossed to the pantry, and took down the cedar box. The lid sighed when I lifted it, cedar and time and every quiet I've kept for 12 years. I pulled out a tied bundle of paper and laid it on the table. Promissory notes. Dates. Amounts. His father's name in ink that still remembered the man who wrote it. "What's that?" he asked. "Receipts," I said. "When your dad was building, he borrowed. From me. These are the notes he gave. I didn't call them in because I was busy loving him. Today, I'm busy teaching him." He touched the top page with a finger like it might bite. "He owes you a lot." "He owes the truth," I said. "Truth costs what it costs." I put a second envelope on the pile and tapped it. "And this is the surprise. Tell your dad that if he wants me to sign tonight, he will wire $2 million, not to me, to the Walter and Eleanor Fund I opened this morning. It feeds families and pays rent for people who don't have lawyers. Then he will sign a standing pledge for $1 million a year for 5 years. We'll post grants on a bulletin board at church so folks can see where help goes. Nothing hidden. Nothing slick. He can choose to pay the notes instead. He will not enjoy that math." Jax's eyes went round. "He's gonna freak." "He's going to decide who he wants to be," I said. "Sometimes freaking is the first step." The boy looked at the letter in his hands, then back at me. "Am I in trouble?" "You?" I softened. "No. You are invited. I expect you to come by here twice a month to help me with the garden and to deliver 2 pies to people who need them, no camera, no post. You'll learn names. You'll learn how talking to someone you're helping is different from talking about them." He blinked. "Okay," he said, half unsure, half relieved. "Good," I said. "Now take your father his grade." He stood, shoved a cookie into his hoodie pocket, and walked to the door. On the porch he turned back. I didn't know they threw you out like that," he said, voice low. "I thought you wanted to try the hotel." "I don't want a hotel," I said. "I want my family to have manners." He nodded quick, like that was a word he could carry. "See you tonight," he said, and ran down the steps. The house exhaled. I set the notes back in the box and slid the fund's routing slip into my purse. At 10, I walked to the bank in my navy cardigan and asked Brenda to open the new account with me as trustee. We wrote for rent, groceries, heat, meds on the memo of the first blank check like a promise. Brenda squeezed my hand. I like this version of justice, she said. Me too, I said. It makes good noise.
Back home, I called Harlan King, the buyer's counsel. He picked up on the second ring, voice smooth as elevator music. I'll sign tonight if the following conditions are met, I said, and read them: deed recorded, trust documents executed with me as manager, public apology posted on the company site, wire confirmation for the Walter and Eleanor Fund.
If any piece is missing, I added, escrow holds. Tell your people not to threaten me. I knit when I'm threatened.
He was quiet a beat longer than casual.
Understood, Mrs. Whitaker. You're a formidable negotiator. I'm a mother, I said and hung up.
At 5:50, the black SUV rolled up again.
Tonight, it carried worry-like luggage. Sloane's smile was pulled too tight.
Chase carried a slim folder and a pen he kept checking like it might run out of ink from fear. A notary I hadn't met before trailed them, brisk and practical. Behind all of them, Jax hovered, watching doors like they might teach him something.
Evening, I said. Coats on the chair. Hands washed.
We don't sign with dirty fingers. They did it without arguing. Small miracles are still miracles. When we sat, Chase slid documents across the wood, the deed transferring Larkspur to me, stamped and recorded, trust papers for Jax with my name by trustee in a font that finally looked like respect, a printed apology, word for word the one I'd heard, signed and ready to post.
My throat went warm. And the fund? I asked.
He swallowed and glanced at Sloane. She stared at the plate of cookies like they'd wronged her.
Wire is queued, he said.
Our bank flagged it for verification because of the amount. You'll have confirmation within the hour.
Let's call together, I said.
I pulled my phone and set it on speaker.
He did the same.
Brenda's voice answered on the second ring. She greeted me, then him, her tone different for both in a way I enjoyed. He gave the verification phrase. We listened to the click of keys, the small breathing of a person who makes systems move.
Confirmed, she said.
2 million received in the Walter and Eleanor Fund account.
She paused, softer. Nice work, Lily. I thanked her and hung up.
The room felt like it had just taken off its shoes.
Chase looked at me, eyes shiny. Now will you sign?
I folded my hands over the consent, let the notary's pen wait.
One more thing, I said, and opened the cedar box.
I laid the bundle of promissory notes on the table, then covered it with my hand.
These. Principal and interest would hurt. I'm not collecting.
I will, however, staple this receipt, I lifted the fund confirmation, to this bundle and mark it paid, if you agree to deliver 10 hours a month, every month for a year, at the food pantry.
No cameras. No press. Just cans, carts, people. Sloane snapped. This is theater. No, I said. This is repair. You don't get to purchase it. You have to live it.
Chase nodded before she could argue again.
I'll do it, he said quickly. I will. He turned to her. We will.
Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Jax, saw him watching her, and something in her spine adjusted by an inch. Fine, she said, and managed not to make it sound like failure.
I smiled at the notary. Now.
She slid the consent in front of me, flipped to the flagged page, and set her seal nearby.
I lifted my pen.
Before the tip touched paper, my phone buzzed with a message from Harlan, urgent, contact immediately. Counter-consent presented to escrow by your son's CFO an hour ago.
Appears to nullify golden share. We have paused. Need your direction. I looked up at Chase.
He had the good sense to look confused first and then scared.
I set my pen down slow. Who, I asked softly, is trying to outflank me?
The doorbell rang, hard enough to rattle the glass. The knock rattled my little front door like a storm gust. Everyone at the table froze, the notary with her pen halfway raised, Sloane clutching the edge of her chair, Jax wide-eyed.
Chase shifted, face pale.
I stood slowly, smoothed my navy cardigan, and walked to the door. When I opened it, a man in a slim gray suit stood on the porch, briefcase in hand. Behind him was another black car idling, headlights slicing across my garden.
Mrs. Whitaker, he asked, too confident. I'm Alan Kerr, counsel for Scout Patha's CFO. I'm here to deliver an executed consent.
It supersedes the golden share. Company counsel assures us it resolves any gaps in escrow. He held out a sleek folder. Once this is filed, your rights will be considered extinguished.
I didn't take it. Filed where? I asked.
Delaware, he said smoothly.
Everything important files there.
I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe. And did Delaware sign my kitchen table 12 years ago? Did Delaware watch Alma Ruiz stamp a page with coffee rings on it?
He blinked, hesitated. A small crack.
Mrs. Whitaker, this is a standard mechanism.
Nobody wants conflict. If you sign tonight, everyone gets paid.
Behind me, Chase muttered, I didn't know he'd do this. His eyes darted to Sloane, but she looked away. I raised my voice, steady as a church bell.
Gus.
My neighbor stepped out of the shadows on the porch, broad-shouldered in his denim jacket, arms folded.
He'd been waiting just in case.
Kerr's confidence flickered. I pulled out my phone and tapped Hanover's number.
Gravel answered quick. Talk to me.
Man on my porch, I said. Claims a counter-consent nullifies my golden share.
Hanover chuckled low.
That's bluff and fraud both. Delaware law honors the original agreement, especially notarized.
Text me his name.
I did. Hanover whistled.
Oh, I know that one. He's already on thin ice.
Don't sign, don't touch. I'll have compliance file an injunction before he makes it to his car.
I looked Kerr in the eye. Leave.
His smile wavered.
If you refuse.
Leave, I said again. My voice had the weight of 100 schoolrooms and one lifetime of being underestimated.
He shut his briefcase.
This isn't over, he muttered, retreating to the waiting car. Oh, it's over, I whispered as the tail lights vanished.
Just not the way you wanted.
Back at the table, Chase's hands shook.
Ma, I swear, I didn't know they were trying to cut you out.
I set the cedar box in front of him, laid my hand on the bundle of notes.
Ignorance isn't innocence.
You let wolves circle because they promised you steak.
But you're still my son.
And that means you get one last chance to choose better.
I slid the promissory notes across.
Sign that you acknowledge payment through the Walter and Eleanor Fund. Sign that you will serve at the pantry for a year. Sign that you will honor this golden share until the day I put it in my grave.
He picked up the pen.
His eyes shone with shame, but he signed each page, steady strokes. Sloane muttered under her breath, but when Jax caught her eye, she fell silent. The notary stamped each sheet, her seal hissing like approval. Then she slid the consent across. I wrote my name with a hand that did not tremble. My golden share stayed alive, but the funds unlocked.
Silence hung.
Then my phone buzzed again, Hanover's voice sharp in my ear.
Escrow released. Wire complete.
The bluff collapsed before it began.
And Mrs. Whitaker.
Yes. You didn't just save yourself. You saved the deal. Buyers trust you now more than your son.
I ended the call, looked at Chase. There's your lesson. Money isn't armor. Character is. He lowered his head. I'll do the pantry. I'll do it all. I promise.
Promises are just paper until they're lived, I said.
Start Monday.
Sloane gathered her coat stiffly. You humiliated us, she hissed.
No, I said softly. I educated you.
They left with the notary trailing, SUV lights cutting through the dark. Jax lingered. Gran, he whispered, can I still come help in the garden?
I touched his cheek. Every week.
We'll grow tomatoes and truth. When the door shut, I sat at my table with Walter's picture above me, cedar box closed, notes marked paid. The night was quiet except for the tick of the clock. I had kept my home, my dignity, and my power. Chase had his millions, but he also had a mirror now. And if he ever forgot this lesson, I still had the golden share. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge is not taking everything, it's making sure they remember you could.